Once again, violence is escalating from Jerusalem to Gaza. Hundreds have been injured. Dozens have been killed in Gaza, including 9 children. In a time of a global pandemic, this puts Palestinians at an extreme risk of disease. Islamic Relief stands with our brothers and sisters in Palestine, as we have been since 1994, providing life-saving aid. Help us continue our work inside Palestine. Donate today.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I'm very happy to come back to you with this program, Khairun Nas Anfa'hum Linnas. The best among you is the best for everybody of you. This program is sponsored by Islamic Relief Canada. I would like to thank them first to sponsor our program. Today we're speaking about Muslim in Canada. We've heard about the attack happened on an innocent family in London, Ontario, last Sunday, which heartbreak everybody and left us all in shock. And we almost all of us asking the same question: what we can do, what kind of action we can take, to whom we can address our concerns. All these things, we will talk about them today with the representative of the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Muslims in Canada, according to the statistics, they count almost 1.3 million. It's almost 2.3% of the Canadian populations. Some cities, they reach over 7%, like in GTA area, and maybe in Greater Montreal around 6%. I would argue that in the city of Ottawa, we have almost the same percent, if it's not more. This population of Muslims in these areas, they need protection, they need to know their rights and to understand what's happening around them with the rules of the Canadian Constitution. So today I would like to welcome with you the CEO of the National Council of the Canadian Muslim, my brother, Mr. Mustafa Farouk. Assalamu alaikum, Mustafa.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me, Dr. Sharif.
I know that you are traveling. It's a hard week for you, for every Muslim in this country, and I would say around the world, because it was a heartbreaking. Our hearts with this family. I hope Allah will rest their souls in peace, and with the kids that will face a hardship after a while when he will know about what happened to his family. So first of all, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. So my name is Mustafa Farouk, and I'm the CEO of the National Council of Canadian Muslims. I'm a lawyer by training and worked as a senior political staffer for some time before coming to NCCM. I also was a visiting scholar at Osgoode Hall Law School and spent a little bit of time at the Federal Court of Canada before coming to NCCM.
Okay, so we speak with a lawyer, which is a good thing, that you know how the Constitution works. And now you are leading one of the most important, if it's not the most important, institution for defending Muslims and helping Muslims in Canada. Tell us more about NCCM. By the way, we refer to National Council of Canadian Muslims in all our program as NCCM. So just for everybody to know.
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, يعني في العربية يعني we're للدفاع لحقوق المسلمين. We're here to defend the rights of Canadian Muslims. We're an anti-Islamophobia organization, and that means we work on multiple levels, at the policy level in various legislatures, at the legal levels, defending your rights in court, in education, in community engagement, and with media, all to collectively work to defend Canadian Muslims and to fight for a Canada where everyone can feel safe. That's very simply what we do.
Well, that's very important. You spoke about levels, political, then you spoke about media, then you spoke about the society, education. Can you give us indeed some examples what you did with these people or with these levels?
Sure. So in terms of policy work, we do a lot of policy work. And whether that's working to pass new legislation at various levels. So, for example, earlier this year, you may have heard that Canada banned the Proud Boys and other white supremacist groups. That came because NCCM and many other organizations, alhamdulillah, and not just us, but many organizations came together. But we, alhamdulillah, had a major role in leading that to push the Canadian government to do more to dismantle white supremacist groups. And there's numerous other examples I could give. But one of the other things we do, to speak about some of the legal work that we do, is we often are in courts to defend members of the Canadian Muslim community. So, for example, a few years ago, we defended a lady who wore hijab, who was told to leave a Quebec courtroom because she was told that that was not suitable wear. And alhamdulillah, we were successful at the Quebec Court of Appeal in having that decision reversed. Right now, we're in court around Bill 21, which is the religious symbols ban in Quebec. I'm happy, inshallah, to talk about that a little bit more. But we're also in litigation with the Canadian Border Services Agency for denying a gentleman who was coming to Canada the ability to come through unmolested because he was a Somali Muslim. We're in litigation with the People's Party of Canada because they call, in the submission of our plaintiff, he was doxxed and called a terrorist by someone who was from the PPC
because of his skin,
because he was Muslim.
Okay.
And then we do a lot of education work. So that means that almost all the major school boards in the GTA, for example, NCCM directly works with them, educating teachers, educating students, and working to pass long-term change at the educational level so that all of our students can feel safe.
So do you have kind of curriculums to speak to those people? Like I would say the Canadian Border Services, do you try to make a curriculums or army or police forces? Because these are the guys we mostly have a problem with, especially when you're crossing borders or somebody get arrested and they use the extra force on him, like what happened with our brothers Abdurrahman Abdi in Ottawa.
Right. So, part of what we do is training, but also part of what we do is push for policy change. So, like, for example, if we talk about the CBSA or CSIS, we push very heavily for things like CSIS oversight, which came, and we fought for that for over a decade. And alhamdulillah, successfully given. And now we work directly with NCCM and other agencies that are in an oversight body over CSIS. That's the kind of longitudinal work that we do, which you might not always see or know about or hear about, but it's very important that we're proactively working on these things so that we, in the long term, can solve the issues in front of us.
So for people who doesn't know what is CSIS, CSIS is the intelligent forces. It's like the CIA for USA. It's the one in Canada. So please, Brother Mustafa, let me know, tell us, when did it start, when the NCCM start, and what's the story behind it? Is there a story, or you just collectively came and say, okay, we will organize something to help our Muslims in Canada?
So, NCCM started a long time before, me. We've been around for almost 20 years and has had a number of important work, things that NCCM did at the time, from defending Maher his repatriation to many other important issues involving Canadian Muslims, eventually also dealing with a lawsuit with the Prime Minister's office, where at that time a representative from Prime Minister Stephen Harper's office accused NCCM of having nefarious connections, which NCCM was successful on in litigation. It's been those kinds of longitudinal battles, but alhamdulillah, with the strength of our community, with the support of our community, we've been able to grow a lot further and a lot farther in the last few years. And that's been because of all of your support.
So we've heard some examples of your targeted audience or people you want to work with, but do you also try to work with Muslim communities to educate them about their rights, about their responsibilities, and how they can talk to their neighbors? Because we are the best messenger of who we are. So if we put ourselves in a good example, people will respect us. I guess most of people will respect us. So tell us about your work with the community.
So we do a lot of work with community engagement. So that means that in Ontario, we're constantly engaging with our masajid, with community organizations, whether they're Pakistani or Arab or Somali or what have you, from a variety of different sects and approaches, so that we can collectively work at making our societies better. Do we have a lot more work to do? Absolutely. And one of the biggest things that you can do to help us in our work and as we try to grow and do more is tell us your nasiha, give us your suggestions. We're always available to listen and to dialogue. You can send us an email anytime at info@nccm.ca. Let's say you have a question, you need help, you want to give us advice, you want to give us a suggestion. Obviously, we have the National Action Summit on Islamophobia coming up, which we're just committed to by the federal government in question period this week. We're going to need all of your advice and thoughts, and the process for how to submit your ideas and thoughts is going to be out soon. But we're all going to need, especially with what's happening right now, we all need to come together more now, more than ever. That unity together is so critical.
I just left in the comment the website, the NCCM.ca. It's very easy, and I put it on the screen so people can see it and look into more information. Next, I prepare a video telling us more about NCCM, so we will watch it together.
We've been there for Canadian Muslims, actively engaging, empowering, educating about our rights, our responsibilities.
If we don't speak up for our rights, no one else will.
Defending fundamental rights and freedoms in the highest court of the land.
Canadian Muslims understand the importance of public safety and national security. Indeed, they benefit from national security as much as any other Canadian does. But Canadian Muslims pay a higher cost for that security.
Explaining who we are to our neighbors, friends, colleagues, and beyond. Engaging with community partners. Mobilizing around issues that matter to all of us. Standing up for human rights.
And we need to hear a very clear message from political leaders that hatred in any form against any group is not acceptable. We need to hear that loudly and clearly, particularly in such a charged climate.
Working behind the scenes to help employers understand how to make diversity work.
The employer came to us and said, we want to develop a new uniform policy with your assistance, with your support. What are the requirements? How can you help us? Let's work together.
Providing expertise from professionals in the field.
Well, rights is only one half of the equation. To be complete citizens, to be meaningful citizens, we also need to understand that with citizenship comes obligations.
Training tomorrow's leaders.
I had the fire in me, and now I have the tools, and what more can you ask for?
Responding to misinformation and organized smear campaigns.
I want to examine, I want to think about, to encourage us to think about Islamophobia, the fear of Muslims, anti-Muslim prejudice, not only as an organic social phenomenon, but as a product that is manufactured, packaged, sold, and consumed.
I would argue that the majority of the people who are buying these ideas are not racists or bigots or even Islamophobes in the usual sense of the word, but rather people who are looking for answers.
NCCM is there to offer real answers to today's questions about Islam, sharing strategies on how to get our story out.
First of all, the reason we're doing this is because we want people to accurately, fairly, effectively, sensitively cover us.
Inspiring Canadian Muslims with positive role models, promoting activism and community participation. We are the National Council of Canadian Muslims. We are your voice, your future.
Yes, I hope you are the real voice of all Muslims in Canada. So this is actually explained a lot to us, but there was a question, and I would like to emphasize or a point, the human resources. So can you help also companies to adopt some human resources where you can challenge anti-racism within the companies?
Yeah, so I mean, oftentimes we work directly with employers at sometimes very large companies, sometimes smaller companies, when there are issues relating to Islamophobia or inclusivity issues, religious accommodation issues. Obviously, it depends, and our legal team is always there to take your calls and to see what we can do.
What about employments, like the engagement with employers, like a federal levels or the national levels, like I mean the provincial level, to have majority, like percentage of Muslims being employed within the entity of that government body?
So that's not something we've advocated for historically, to have a percentage quota of Canadian Muslims at any given public employer, but it's certainly an interesting question to think about.
Okay, so I'm just going into the website, and I see you have programs like civic engagement, defending rights, and public advocacy. Do you have anything else except that? And I would like to speak about the bill after that, Bill 21. But if you have another programs, please let us know.
I mean, I would say that for most issues relating to standing up for justice, as it relates to taking care of our communities, we're there. Whether it's telling our stories through the media, whether it's fighting in courts, whether it's standing up in legislatures, whether it's working tirelessly with all of our staff to make sure that good legislation gets passed, bad legislation gets defeated. That's what we're here to do.
Why I'm asking, because I know that you are doing some work to help also brothers and sisters who are suffering around the world. Like you collected some donation recently for brothers and sisters in Palestine, especially in Gaza. So can you tell us more about that?
Right. So I mean, I can speak to the work that we did in Gaza in terms of our advocacy. I think we were all, and obviously, I mean, it's a tough time to talk about this, but since you ask about it, I'll address it. We were, I think, all, it's been very difficult to see with the situation in Palestine. It's broken all of our hearts to see what happened on the 27th of Ramadan in Palestine and Al-Aqsa. And then the subsequent airstrikes that we all saw just demolish the homes of our civilians. With what the United Nations and many other groups noted as potential war crimes. And so one of the things we began to do is work very heavily with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well as others to push the Canadian government to be more active on the issue. You may have seen our call for an immediate, $26 million aid package to Palestine. That was answered with a $25 million aid package. As well, we've been pushing very heavily on various MPs, various folks to speak out very clearly in terms of their perspective. And you may have seen the letter that was sent by the Canada-Palestinian Friendship Committee, Parliamentary Friendship Committee, in relation to this question. Are we at a place that I think, not just Canadian Muslims, but are we at a place that I think Canadians who care about human rights can be satisfied in relation to Canada's stance on Palestine and on peace in the Middle East in general? Absolutely not. We're not satisfied. And I don't think Canadians who care about these things should be satisfied. But we have a lot of work to do, and within a few weeks we were able to do some important things. Let's continue to push forward as we set forward on changing Canada's stance as a middle power to do important work on fighting for peace and justice everywhere. But again, these are tough times that we're living in with what happened in London just now. This has been especially tough. We have to think about how do we take care of all the members of our community, whether they're here, whether they're elsewhere.
Yeah, we'll come to that. But back to our questions. You worked with several charitable organizations to bring your donation to Gaza. Can you tell me more about that? I think you worked with Islamic Relief on that matter, is it?
So we're not a charity, like we don't do humanitarian work.
Okay.
I mean, we did send out an open letter that was signed on by a number of organizations calling for the Prime Minister to be unequivocal in his stance in condemning war crimes. Mm-hmm. And that was signed on by, I think, 200 organizations. It was and also was, I think a full page ad in the Hill Times and things of that nature. But we don't directly engage in giving out aid to any charity organization.
Clear. Youth are the future of our country. They are the one who are involved within the society. They understand the education system. They understand the constitutions in Canada more than those who came in elder age. So tell me, what's your involvement with youth and how you can prepare them for better future in Canada?
So I'll say two things. Number one, I think that, of course, our youth are important, our young people are important, but so are our elders, and so are the people who are middle-aged. Every single Canadian has an obligation, especially with what we're seeing right now, to stand up for justice. You don't have to speak English extremely well to stand up and do the right thing. لا تتكلم في اللغة العربية أقرب أردو من بوثة. Whatever you speak, whatever language you speak, as long as your heart is clean and as long as you're ready to stand up and work, all of us have a role to play. All of us have good work to do. And there are many, many, many things you can do to help out. Right now, we have teams of over 100 volunteers in Ontario alone, but we also have folks in Quebec. We have folks in Alberta, and we're growing across the country. We have folks in Ottawa. Please, I urge you, if you'd like to get involved, if you'd like your kids to learn about how to stand for justice, we're always here to take volunteers, to train folks, and for them to go on to do many great things.
That's good. You touch base on languages, and that's very important. So we know that many newcomers, especially, they don't speak the two official languages of Canada, the English and French, and they could face racism or phobia from others. So can they contact you, and what languages you can, what the languages your service is in?
Sure. So we offer service, obviously, in English, French, Arabic, Urdu, Somali. However, if there are folks who speak other languages that we might not speak, that shouldn't deter you. We can always arrange for translators and things of that nature. We're here to defend anyone who's experiencing Islamophobia. And we're here to stand with Canadians who are going through injustice as Canadian Muslims in the way we need to. That means standing up against anti-Asian racism. That means standing up against anti-Indigenous racism. That means standing up against xenophobia of any kind. That's what we're here to do.
Great, great. So you're working very hard since, I guess, the last attack on the Quebec mosque, where we had, sadly, 6 Muslim men gunned down in cold blood in a place of worship. And I think that was a big challenge for NCCM, because it was one of the biggest attacks on Muslims. Then in Quebec, the same province faced a new bill, which is Bill 21 now. And I know that you are fighting that bill. So please tell me, is these two coincidences or two things related or not, and how you trying to eliminate them from the societies over there in Quebec?
Sure. So, obviously with what happened in the Quebec City Mosque was one of the most difficult things that I think our community has to go through. Today at the Janaza in London, I sat down with members of the Quebec City Mosque who came all the way from Quebec City to London to show their solidarity with what happened. I think that obviously this is a tough time for our communities, and
I'm sorry, brothers. Can we have a moment of silence, maybe on the souls, and read Al-Fatiha? I ask all our audience to read Al-Fatiha, and we will get our breaths. Obviously, it was a hard time for all of us. Please go ahead.
I mean, obviously, for shortly after we had the Quebec City mosque shooting, you know, NCCM worked in court to strike down a bill called Bill 62, which was a bill that prevented women who wore niqab from accessing public services. NCCM was successful in court with the Canadian Civil Liberties Association in getting a stay on that bill. And so the new government that came, the CAC government, their response to that was to bring a bill that banned those who wore hijab or all religious symbols from getting certain public sector jobs. And they tried to insulate themselves from court challenges like the ones they knew that organizations like ours would bring through what's called the notwithstanding clause. We've been fighting that in court since the day it passed. Within 24 hours after they passed their bill, we had filed our legal challenge. Alhamdulillah, we had our first important victory earlier this year, where we partially struck down Bill 21. The Quebec government has appealed to the Quebec Court of Appeal. We're cross-appealing that as well, because we need to strike the whole thing down. We all, as Canadian Muslims, but not just Canadian Muslims, if you're any human being that cares about justice, that cares about second-class citizenship not being a thing in this country, we need to strike down this bill. It's unfathomable that if you wear a hijab, if you wear a kippah, you can't become a teacher in a French public school. It's unacceptable.
Nothing religious. Okay. So you're still fighting it in the court now?
That's right.
Okay. So is it still in the Quebec court or the federal?
No. So we're waiting to see what the answer of the Quebec Court of Appeal is.
Okay. So do you want to collaborate on the stand of the Prime Minister 2 days ago when he was talking about this bill?
So, I mean, what I'll say very clearly is that I think that the stance that the Prime Minister has taken on this bill has been insufficient. He's said that he's opposed it, which opposes it, which is a good thing, which is pretty much the same position as the Conservative Party and the NDP. There's some small differences, which are important to note. But I think what we can say overwhelmingly is that the responses by major party leaders on Bill 21 is just completely unsatisfactory. They need to do more, and we've called on the federal government to do more. And it's an issue that is of grave concern to our organization, but to many other Canadian Muslims. And certainly, I suspect that this kind of thing will be a major part of our National Action Summit. So, the London attack came last Sunday on a family of 5. It left 4 of them dead and 1 kid, 9-year-old boy, still in the hospital. This attack, as I said, it wasn't an attack on all Muslims in Canada. It was an attack on all Canadians and on Canadian values. So can you tell us more about that so we can end with it? I think that what is your plan? I think what we called for in the immediate aftermath of the attack, in consult, of course, with the London Muslim community and with many other Canadian Muslim communities, was for a national action summit on Islamophobia to bring together the federal government, the provincial government, and the municipal government by the end of July, so that we can develop out new binding policy solutions. And the test of that summit, and more importantly, whether governments are serious when they say that they're here to stop Islamophobia and more violence against our community, the test of that will be what is going to be actually put into policy. That is going to be something we're going to be working on a lot in the next few months. We're going to need your help. More information about that will be coming out soon, but we're going to need the help of every single Canadian Muslim, people that care about standing up against this, to move this forward, and we're going to need your help.
At the end, I would like to thank you for everything you do, guys, in NCCM to help our Muslims, brothers and sisters, and all human rights advocacies in Canada, and trying to do it around the world. Again, if anybody would like to talk to them, to file any complaint, to know his rights, you can reach them by going to their website, nccm.ca. Mr. Mustafa, I would like to give you the last 2 minutes if you would like to say anything before you leave.
All I'll say is that I know that for many of us, with everything that's happening, it can be very tough. It has already been a tough year for many of us. Some of us have lost family members. Some of us have lost our businesses. On top of this, seeing what's happening out, in other parts of the world, seeing what happens here in London, I know how difficult this has been. It's been difficult for all of us. لكن لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Don't despair of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For I think all of us, we have to remember that this is a long road ahead, that trials and tribulations will come. It's our job to do the best we can. And that's the important thing. We have to try the best we can. After that, it's in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's really important for us all to remember at this time, because it's very easy to get caught in apathy. That feeling of ajz, that we can't, we seek protection from ajz and kasr. But it's very easy to get caught in that sense of helplessness, that I can't do anything, and so I won't do anything. And that things will never change. The reality is that things will change, inshallah. And I can tell you that when we do things, like when we push for the dismantling of white supremacist groups, that was done, alhamdulillah. When we pushed for things like, the designation of a day on Islamophobia, alhamdulillah, that was done. When we pushed for other major policy changes, things like the security infrastructure program, CSIS oversight, many other things, alhamdulillah, those things were done. And so we can work together to make things are done. Now is the time. We can't let these things keep happening. Let's join together and make it happen. And the last thing I'll say is that I know that for many of you, things are very, very tough. It's been very tough to see what happened to our young family, to the young boy who remains. Take time to take care of yourself.
Thank you. I would like to appreciate your presence in our programs, and despite your busy time and traveling, we made it for our brothers and sisters here in Canada. And thank you again for what are you doing national level. God bless you, and God protect all of you at NCCM. At the end, I would like to thank everybody who is watching us now live and would re-watch us on our YouTube channel. Assalamu alaikum, and we'll see you inshallah next week.
في 47 دولة حول العالم وفي أشد الأحوال صعوبة كانت الإغاثة الإسلامية في قلب الحدث. وصلنا إلى أكثر من 120 مليون إنسان مستحق لتبرعاتكم. نحظى بدعم الحكومات المانحة وكبرى وكالات الأمم المتحدة. تبرع الآن للإغاثة الإسلامية عبر العالم. زكاتك سعادة.